Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Space Game Junkie Podcast. I, as always, am your co-host, Brian, and joining me, as always, is your co-host, Jim.
Hello there.
Sadly, we are sans Hunter this week. He hurt his back. So if y'all could send positive vibes, healing thoughts, whatever you do, if you could send those his way, that'd be great because, I think we all know what it's like to have a terribly hurt back. It's not fun. Last time what?
I think it's his anniversary too, which makes me speculate on how he threw his back out.
Didn't that just happen? I'm not going to tell you how he told me he did it. But anyway, yeah, and we have a guest this week, folks, joining us from Chicago, the founder of Riveted Games, Philip Devine, here to talk about Falling Stars, War of Empires. Welcome, Philip.
Hey, everyone. Happy to join you.
We're happy to have you. Now, before we get into your game, let's spend a minute talking about other crap we're playing. Philip, since you're our guest, let's start with you. What, besides your game, have you been playing lately?
Sure, I've kind of got two. I'm going to venture off video games. I've been playing a lot of Galaxy Trucker, the board game.
I've heard that's amazing.
I couldn't say enough good things about it. It's so fun. You can play it with two players. You just build this ship. A lot of times it ends up really crappy, and then they send you on these different missions, and all the missions just further destroy your ship, and basically whoever survives at the end wins. So Galaxy Trucker is definitely a good one. Fun for two, fun for I think up to four. That's a good one. And then a smaller game that I found on the forums for the game engine that I use, JMonkey engine. It's called Lightspeed Frontier. It's I think just entering alpha. And what's funny is it's actually kind of like a video game of Galaxy Trucker. You build these little modular spaceships, and you get set off on quests, and it's kind of like Terratech in space. I don't know if you guys have played Terratech or seen it, but you just build these little ships out of these components, and it's just like a wacky physics-based shipbuilding game where you just go out and dogfight other randomly generated ships and stuff like that. It's a pretty good time.
Have you played what I think it's called Space Run? Because apparently that is a lot of people say that's the digital version of Galaxy Trucker.
No, I haven't. Space Run?
Yeah, two words, Space Run. It's basically the same thing. You build a ship. You have a ship that's a certain shape, and you can put certain things on it, like guns and shields and whatnot.
Yeah.
And you have to get from one point to another without getting destroyed.
It's almost like a tower defense in reverse.
It's exactly what it is, yeah.
It's like you're driving the castle, and you put the turrets and stuff on it and try to not get killed by the stuff that you run through.
Oh, that sounds awesome. Yeah, like my favorite thing about that type of game, Galaxy Trucker, is you're reading through the rule book and you're trying to figure out what the different ship components are and stuff. And they're telling you one by one, like, all right, this is what an engine looks like. You have to get a bunch of different engines. You need as many engines as possible. You get to the next part. This is what a gun looks like. You need as many guns as possible. This is a cargo bay. You need as many cargo bays as possible. By the end of it, you're like, well, what do I prioritize here? So you're just building this thing and always ends up bad. You're always lacking something and you just die spectacularly every game.
Yeah, I want to point out, since we're talking about Space Run, on the 17th of June, Space Run Galaxy, which could be called Space Run 2, is coming out.
Wow. I think I gotta get in on this.
Yeah, it looks pretty rad. It looks even spacier and gunnier.
And runnier?
And runnier. I don't know about runny. It's a little thick.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yes, so that's what I got going on.
So I've been playing some Space Pirates and Zombies 2. Been playing a little bit of what is this called?
There we go. I couldn't talk for a minute. I'm sorry.
It's Death State is the other thing that I've been playing.
That's a great game. That's a great game. Yes, I own it.
Holy crap!
It's great.
It's like, yeah, I'm not the fastest person in the world to come off $15 on a dual stick shooter. When the market is pretty full of those things. But then I messed around with it and it was just like, oh my god, yes. Yeah, and it's a one stick shooter because it auto aims for you, and thank God it does because there's enough crap flying. You don't want to have to think about shooting and moving. Moving is enough. But yeah, it's like playing a twin stick shooter in Cthulhu's Nightmares, kind of.
Hmm.
There's another kind of
Yeah.
similar game like that aims for you. It's called Seraph. You might want to look into that. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, okay, cool. So
Okay.
yeah, I've been doing that. Tried playing some Star Trek Online with Hunter, and I rage quit it so hard I uninstalled it, and then I reinstalled it because I just am dumb like that. But but anyway, him and Cloud like plowed me through the ground mission stuff that I was stuck in, and they assure me that the ground mission stuff gets far worse in episode 2. So
Great.
it's like, ooh, I can look forward to that. Yeah, so Hunter's just like, yeah, just give me your login and I'll just run you through that stuff like while you're asleep and you never need to see it, and then we can play spaceships. I was like, okay. So
Isn't that nice when you have a game that you don't even have to play?
I know, right? It's like a power leveling service, but I don't have to pay them. And he's not even in China.
Speaking of Star Trek Online, that's one of the games in this week's poll, and it's winning by 1 vote. So far, it's been neck and neck between that and 1990s Hard Nova.
Really?
Yeah.
Hard Nova is hard.
Hard Nova is a very hard game. Folks, if you don't know what Hard Nova is, there was a game that came out in 1989 called Sentinel Worlds Future Magic Volume 1. That was what it was called, I think. Or it was Future World Sentinel. It was one of those. I get confused. And Hard Nova is the sequel to that that's even harder than that original game, and that game was hard.
Oh, wait. Maybe Hard Nova is not what I'm thinking of.
What are you thinking of?
I was thinking of Escape Velocity Nova.
Oh,
So
different Nova.
That's the 2D top-down eliteness thing. Okay, different animal.
Different animal. Yeah, Hard Nova is both space and ground combat, like the first game, and it's hard. And yeah, for some reason, those two games have been neck and neck since I launched the poll. Like, I'm like, what the hell is happening? Like, either people want a game
What are you running Hard Nova off of? Like floppy disks or something?
DOSBox. I'll probably find copies. I actually have a floppy disk version. I actually own it, but I don't have a floppy drive. I mean, who has a floppy drive anymore? So I might have to get a questionable
So
version.
is the ground combat actually... I remember in Sentinel Worlds, it was like a wire diagram almost of corridors, and then your guys were just colored dots. It was almost like that Dead Knot game. Dead Knot reminds me a lot of my memories of
It's
Sentinel
similar. It's
'cause you
kind of
don't see your
isometric
dudes, they're
though
just
this time.
blips. Oh, okay.
But yeah, so I might be playing Star Trek Online on Thursday or Hard Nova. I don't know yet.
I don't know. Either one sounds like a winner.
But what I've been playing,
If you play Star Trek, do this.
yeah,
Play a Romulan, because the Romulans
I have a
are
star-
the
I have a
newest.
I have a Starfleet
Okay.
Starfleet character because that's what they told me to
okay.
do. That's what Hunter and Cloud told me to do.
Yeah, because that's what we're playing. But I was just saying, like, if you want the smoothest experience, if you do a Romulan, because it's the newest content, so therefore they have refined how they wrote the campaign, and it's not painful. The ground stuff is a Romulan. I don't sweat. The ground stuff is a Federation. Makes my skin crawl. I want to shoot myself in the face with a phaser on stun, and just like wake up when it's over.
It's not so bad if you turn on that third person like over the shoulder mode. It's a little better.
Yeah,
than,
the
a little
Beaky
better.
is your friend.
Yeah,
But
it's a
yeah.
little better. So what I've been playing is like I've recorded a lot of videos this weekend, and eventually my brain was like, just stop, you're done. So the first game I went to was 3030 Death War Redux. How do you say that word? Redux.
Redonkulous.
Redux.
Yes.
That game is so great, you guys.
Yeah, I really like that.
It's so great. I think
it needs mouse controls though.
It may make it too easy. The combat actually isn't that bad once you get a hang of it. It's not that bad. I've only killed 2 or 3 ships though, but it's not that bad. We're gonna have them on the podcast next week, folks. By the way, that's an early morning podcast because they're all over Europe. So just FYI, they're gonna be on the podcast next week, 6 a.m. Oh God, my time.
What, the 3030 Death War guys?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Ooh, I'm psyched for that.
I know. I'm very
I
excited.
should pay attention to Trello.
And what else I've been playing is yesterday, I just had the strangest urge to play Drox Operative. I don't know why, but I loaded up Drox Operative, and 3 hours later, hey, I'm still playing Drox Operative. Because that's what that game does to me, man. I'll start playing
It's easy
it.
to do.
Oh, I'll start playing it. It's like, oh, wait, where the fuck? Where the hell?
Yeah,
Excuse me.
the thing is the game itself, like the experience of playing it, is so transparent that it's just like you just click the mouse and you don't have to really think about it. It's just like you click and the thing that you expect to happen happens, and it's just like you're just doodling your little ship around.
It's beautiful
And
design.
yeah,
Beautiful
it doesn't
design.
make you. It makes you think about what you want to do, and it doesn't make you think about like how to actually execute it, right? Like a Diablo even, right? Because it's like, oh god, I got to open up my paper doll and like switch around my stuff and sort all my junk and that. And I don't feel that. I don't feel the pressure in Drox Operative. It just flows, right?
It flows so
So
well. It flows almost too well.
yeah, because it just kind of like it mines the shop for you, and then you can just think about just flying around and like how you want to politic these people against each other.
I mean,
And
there's a
whatnot.
ton of tweaking you can do if you want to, but you can also just be like, I'm going to get this awesome laser and kill everything.
Did you say awesome laser?
I did.
Yes.
I did. It just kind of flew out there. Speaking of awesome games, though, we are here to talk about Philip, how would you describe this thing? I'm thinking it's like a kind of a board game, space board game almost. But is that wrong to pigeonhole it like that? Because it did feel when I played it very board gamey, and not in a bad way. That's just like what I felt like when I was playing it. How would you describe this thing?
I would describe it like a board game. Yeah, I think
Boom!
you totally got the right idea there. I mean, I think it's fine to describe it that way because obviously it's not really the type of game to compare against a lot of other 4X or space strategies out there. Because as soon as you put them side by side, you're like, wow, these are nothing alike, except they're all in space. But yeah, it's definitely inspired by a lot of 4X board games like Eclipse, Twilight Imperium, Hegemonia, like just those types of I want to say Euro style games because they just don't have a super big focus on combat. Um, and in my game, yeah, you're building these tons of fleets, especially on the higher galaxy settings. But the fleets are almost just like another resource. Like you're just kind of stationing them there and guarding your planets or guarding your borders. But yeah, they're pretty much just another resource. It does have a relatively simple resource system for people who like those Euro style games. So I think a digital tabletop, that's like a good description of the game.
Well, the thing that I kind of like about this is it's kind of 4X-y, and yet every turn you're actually doing something meaningful. So, like Brian and I tried to play Galciv 3, and there's so much just hitting next turn and waiting on those cues to count down, and it's like, oh, you'll have this technology in 116 turns. Next,
Yeah, I
next,
hate
next,
that.
next.
I mean, that's
And
not too bad when you can fast forward time and you're just playing by yourself. That's not terrible, but like when
yeah,
you're in a
but
multiplayer.
can you imagine play by email? It's like,
Oh,
I have to send you an email, and you have to email it back every time we do nothing.
this technology will be
Oh,
done
God.
this technology will be done in 4 months.
Actual months.
Yeah, actual months. No, I really did like how. I mean, is that a European? I don't play many board games, but is that a European thing that they focus more on building and explore and expanding and less on combat?
Yeah, that's kind of one of the main things about it is they're resource focused. And a lot of people would describe Euro games. Just, I mean, if you go to like Board Game Geek or something, you're going to find a bunch of people fighting about this probably, and I'm going to piss a lot of them off. But yeah, a lot of them, it basically means you're not necessarily playing directly against the other players. You're just trying to beat them at the game. And I feel like that's really what the goal here is. You are doing some things against the other players. You're voting in political agendas. You are battling them from time to time, and towards the end of the game, you're battling them quite a lot. But it really depends on how you set up the game because there's just tons of game setup options. You can even turn off victory conditions on battling so that you're basically just guarding planets and you don't gain victory points by winning in battles. So you can totally remove that whole portion of the game out of it, and it's still just a an Empire expansion game.
So is the AI mindful of that? Like if you turn off the victory points for battles, then it's not going to bother, because if it is victory points, it might chase war.
Yeah, either way, you're gonna want to capture as many planets as possible, and that's the AI's first priority. So because of that, if you were to uncheck the little tick box for planet conquering, trying to think of how that would affect the AI off the top of my head, because we got some really, really complicated AI routines. I think it would pretty much just go along its merry way, but that it very well still could win the game though,
Yeah,
just based
'cause
on whatever else you have checked.
Yeah,
I
because I was thinking like it might say, well, I get victory points if I beat him, and there's a weak fleet over there. I'm gonna go beat it up. But if there's no points involved, it shouldn't bother unless it wants actually to get the planet that it's, that kind of thing.
Right. Off the bat, it doesn't necessarily just go for weak fleets. So even though that might be ideal, but it's just based. The AI is kind of tuned, without giving the whole thing away. It's kind of tuned just to amass resources, and
Mm.
since it's a resource capturing game, and rather than make a million different permutations of AI routines, we basically said, all right, it's going to do this, which is applicable to any type of game type, and it's going to do it very, very well. To the point
Mhm.
where I think after our second patch, where we made some improvements to the AI, people at first were like, "Hey, I've been playing the game on larger galaxy settings, and I'm just killing the AI." We're like, "Okay, well, we can do something about that," because in our tests, I mean, it was beating us pretty handedly.
I'm gonna say
And
I'm sorry. I'm gonna say I learned
yeah, go
something
ahead.
from the AI watching it, because like my first game or two, I don't know, this video I'm showing in the background on the stream is like I think my second game, and I'm just sending all of my cruisers at once to one system, like 4 here, go 4 there, and I'm like,
Yeah,
how is the AI spreading? Oh wait, it's sending one cruiser to each of these 4 hex. Oh, I should be doing that.
yeah, and one cool thing, which I'm not sure if you guys noticed or not, but one it was actually just a debugging tool where we could set up a game for all of the AI to just play against each other and just test all the different permutations of things that can happen. And I will say, if there's one thing that we did really well on our launch, was there were very few like just game breaking bugs. There were some imbalanced things, there were some UI things which we're still working on, but as far as crashes and stuff, there were almost none. And a lot of that was because we just had these huge AI games playing against each other forever. And what you can do is you can just watch them play and you can see what they do and just basically get at least the basic strategy going. And sometimes you can see a humongous battle going on as well.
Yeah, and that's also a thing. Like, if let's say you make 4 different flavors of UI personality, right? And
Yeah,
then you put all 4 of those in there and just make them fight each other, and then you can look at like who did how well against each other, right? So
right.
and that way you could have like, well, this guy's going to go for the economic victory, and this guy's going to go for the military victory, and like who wins out. And if you can end up with like an even spread, then your game's pretty balanced out, and you're good. And I
Right.
really like that you left it in there, right? Because then that shows the world like, hey, we're not afraid to let you watch our AI a little bit. So
Yeah,
because
right. And
very
there's even
few
a lot more
games
we
do
can
that.
do with it. Yeah, we try to be as open as possible. I was kind of talking to you guys about this in the beginning, before we started streaming, but this really started out as just an experimental project, which turned into a hobby project that I was working on a lot more often, to a Kickstarter campaign, and then we found someone who wanted to publish it, and then it became a commercial game and became a lot more serious. But we always kept that kind of hobby feel to it, where we're like, wouldn't it be cool if we just have we feel like we have a lot of ownership over it, and we want this game to be fun for us, and we want this game to be fun for others. And um, it was actually really cool to see all the people even complaining like on the Steam forums about things that were hindering them, because I'm like, wow, these people are actually playing and enjoying this game that I kind of made for myself. And it felt really cool to then go in and tweak some things and make it more fun for other people. And we got some really big patches coming up with a lot more content on that round. But yeah, I just thought I'd mention that.
I have a question. How did you hook up with Lock and Load Publishing? Because I'm looking at their page right now, and their digital offerings are mostly war games. So how did that? I mean, it looks like you're their only digital space game. So how did that come about?
It's a really funny story actually. So our first Kickstarter, because we actually had two of them, and I think if you Google it, you'll find I'm not very good at Kickstarter. Uh, but because we never actually got funded in
Don't
one.
don't feel bad. Kickstarter is very difficult, and I think a lot of people are having some kind of crowdfunding fatigue right now because there are a lot
Yeah,
of
there's
there are a lot
a
of
lot of
worthy
burnout.
yeah there's a lot of worthy I look at Kickstarter maybe once every week or so to see if there are any big new space games, and there are some that look great, but it's they're not going to be funded, and there's no reason they shouldn't be funded because the people putting together the campaign are doing they're doing their job, and at the same time, like no one's biting, so it's like I guess people are just fatigued, and then you see
Yeah,
Well,
some
you
totally.
get into the whole philosophy of the lemon market too, right? Because there's been
Mhm.
enough burn ya Kickstarters that now
uh
everybody suffers, right? So
yeah.
yeah,
So
Yeah,
it'll
seriously.
rebound.
so anyway,
I can go on and on about it.
how'd you get involved with these guys?
So they saw our very first Kickstarter and contact me because if you look it up, it was called Archisphere, and it was actually much more board gamey. It was kind of more two dimensional with some 3D elements, and which kind of fit a little bit more in their wheelhouse. And they're like, oh, like I love these 4X space board games. Um, let's talk to these guys. So they reached out to me, and we started talking, and turns out the current owner of Lock and Load Publishing, he was one of the founders of Matrix games. Armada
What?
2526, Distant Worlds, all kinds of really,
Yeah.
really successful space games. So he really, really knows what he's doing when it comes to space games, space video games. And he kind of sold me on that because at first I looked up their website, and I have to tell you, this was right when he was taking over at Lock and Load, and they had kind of a cruddy website. And I was like, I think this is for real, but I'm really not interested. And then after talking to him on the phone for a while, he was like, "Listen, at least come out to Colorado and let's talk. I really like what you're doing, and I think we could make something really cool." And I was like, "All right, fine. It doesn't hurt." Then after meeting with him face to face and just talking over his experience at Matrix and his experience with space strategy games, I was like, for something that started out as a hobby, years ago, like I might as well just go for this. And so far we've built up a really great relationship. We have a really good business partnership and a friendship too. And it's been just a kind of a cool journey to releasing, what's my first commercial game, and then Lock and Load's first space strategy game.
Yeah, learn everything you can from him, and then come tell us because if no, it's like because you can't have a skill set in everything, right? And
Right.
what I find is the biggest bear in this market is actually marketing, like getting
Oh,
your game in
absolutely.
front of people, and I mean we're easy, right? But but it's like to get like major press coverage and stuff gets worse and worse as time goes on, and then the whole YouTuber scene, which we're kind of not really that because we don't have like a bajillion. I mean, PewDiePie, we are not. Um,
Yeah.
and how you get access to those guys, I could not even. Uh, you know, it's like I would like to have a conversation with a few of them, but their filters are like, and you have to put that wall up, right? Because when you got like 1 million people following you, it's like there's no way that an individual can just get through and be like, hey, look at my game. So there's got to be like some avenue that I don't know of. But yeah, all that stuff. And if you figure it out, man, let us know and we'll let everybody else know.
Yeah, I definitely plan on being open about that kind of thing. We've already had a lot of experience. I know, just by the looks of it, our game hasn't gotten a lot of exposure, but uh, a lot of it was just timing and um, underestimating the effect of a certain Paradox game that came out recently.
Oh
Um,
yeah, that thing.
Oh,
so
You mean
yeah, yeah,
Europa Universalis 4? Was that no?
Europa Universe Suckus is more like it.
Uh
still,
Sorry.
okay.
still, still
Sorry. Not really.
yeah, Stellaris kind of took some of the wind out of our sails, but
You're not alone
um,
there. You're not alone there
Well,
at all.
that's a that game is a beast, right? But it's
Yeah.
a whole different animal. It has, I mean, it's basically nothing to do with what your game's doing,
Oh,
because your game,
absolutely nothing. But
your game is chess, and that game is more like a protracted game of
That game is like a
what
big
would I even
blanket.
call
It's
it?
a blanket. It's a blanket that you cover yourself with slowly, one
Yes.
time, a bit at a time. It's just a giant downy comforter, is what that
Yeah.
game is.
But the thing is, okay, so I look at Stellaris as like, here's a framework, and then we're gonna put stuff in here, right? So because like looking at Crusader Kings, they're gonna just DLC the bejesus out of
That's
that
not
thing.
how they sold it, though. That's what bugs me.
Oh yes, it is. You weren't listening when they were telling the truth then, because it's just like that. Yeah, but I do hope that they throw out some free bones, right? Like, hey, we're gonna put a diplomacy system in that's better than what's here.
Espionage
We're gonna
system,
put in
please. Please put in an
trade.
espionage system.
Yeah, trade and espionage are the two things, because the only way that you can really interact with the other people is beating them over the head, right? And it's kind of like, I would like to set up trade treaties and things, and be friends, and because I would conquer the neighboring civilizations through kindness, right? Like economic hitman style, like go in there and loan them a lot of money, you know. So it's like, yeah, you need a new Stargate. Yeah, I know you can't afford it, but we'll sell it to you for the interest rate will be very low. But you can't do that stuff, right? And in order to make it like a real space politics, like, dirty universe simulator, they need to allow that stuff, the non-violent yet nasty tactics. But it may come.
Yeah.
But and there's a lot of also like the whole Master of Orion thing. I see with Master of Orion and Stellaris both, like people were expecting a lot of things that aren't quite there yet, and I think both of those games need to kind of flesh
But
in.
but
And
Master of Orion is still in early access, so it's a different
that's true.
It's a different
And
expectation.
well, so Stellaris until the
No,
tenth
it's
season.
not. Well,
No, it's out.
it's out, but someone said they still see it as in early access, which honestly I think is probably the best expectation to set for yourself.
Yeah.
Honestly,
But what does that say to the people who bought your game, though? Too, it's
Well, it
well,
says
this
that you
isn't
should have known what
Paradox
you were
saying
getting.
this. This isn't Paradox saying this. This is me saying, look, if you're gonna get Stellaris, expect it to be like not fully baked. Like there are still things that need to be fleshed out.
more like
Yeah.
what they imply with I definitely get you with other developer updates and stuff.
Yeah,
Exactly.
so since we're talking about trade and diplomacy and things like that, in your game, so is the only way I interact with the other races like beating them over the head with my ships and taking their planets, or can I actually have some sort of a neutral relationship with somebody?
Funny you should ask that. Yeah, we do have a political system, which I'll actually give you a glimpse into what's going to be coming out in the next patch too, which I think is really cool. So at the end of every round, all the players get together and they vote on an agenda. Um, right now, as it currently stands, sometimes if you just want to get back into the game, I find that a lot of players are like, I don't really care if I vote yes or no. You get a victory point if you vote for the one that wins. But what ends up happening is if you vote for this agenda, a certain effect is going to happen. Maybe all of your fighters are going to have plus 50% damage, or if you vote against it, all the fighters are going to have minus 50% damage. So if you've
Now, is
stacked up
that
on
just for a
fighters,
turn, or
some of them are for a turn, some of them are for the rest of the game. So
okay?
it really depends. The
I have
political
to
agendas
say,
can be pretty complicated.
I have to say, I really like that. Like it's not every turn, but it's almost every turn you have a decision to make like that. I really do enjoy that. It kind of
The
reminds me of Star Ruler 2 a little bit.
Yeah, the ones that I keep getting is like, do you want to flip your influence and production? We'll
And
flip
that
the
one's
values
tough.
for a turn, and then also there's the one like the planet in the center, right? It's like,
Yeah.
hey, you can capture this planet if you got 4 troops. Does it? And it sets that for the rest of the game, right? Like you just get there and drop 4 ground troops and you got it, or
Yeah.
what? Because that seems like it's kind of like if you can get there first, that's good. But if anybody else gets there first, you kind of don't want them to have it that easy.
Right. And there are certain balance issues that come with these that we're working on, and that one in particular is one that I was focusing on. I was like, how can I make this political agenda just a little bit more interesting? And what's nice is we kind of built a system. Our game engine basically allows us to modify anything and then unmodify anything kind of on the fly. So a lot of these types of effects you'll find are more than just plus X% to your damage, or a lot of them get really complicated. And then what we're about to add is a new strategic action. So after every round, you also get to choose what we call a strategic action, which is like you get a really good bonus in one particular area. Maybe you get a free technology, which those can get really pricey, or you get to explore another. You get to explore one more time with ships with a fleet that's already been depleted of its fuel. So you kind of get like an extra fuel tanker. And then further, there's some supplementaries, which I won't necessarily explain over a podcast like this because it can be a little bit complicated. But what we're adding is a political strategy. So what's going to happen is the player that has the highest influence, the highest total influence from all their planets, they get to craft their own political agenda the next turn, and they can actually have that political agenda affect a single player, whether that's themselves or another AI. So if you have the most influence, but you're really down on resources and you know that you're not going to defeat them maybe in battle that round and the game's coming close to an end, you can pick the political strategy. You can craft one that says the Legion of Reichs is now, for the next turn, going to have half of their total fuel. And the more that you choose this political, the more that you kind of level it up, the stronger they'll get. So maybe it'll go from 25% to 50%. Because we just have all these different little political components that are, like I said, really flexible because of how we ended up developing them. And during your turn, you're going to be able to craft it, and then that's the agenda that gets voted on the next round. So you create it, and then you have to try to pass it. And if you pass it, you can totally gimp another player for that round, or you can really give yourself a big buff. So it kind of adds another layer to that political, achieving victory without warfare necessarily, just through political savviness.
So the influence thing, can you actually, is it within your plan? I haven't seen it do it in the game yet, but maybe you'll build it in. Where if I have enough influence, then planets nearby just start converting over to me. Like if or whenever you seed the galaxy, right? Because I notice whenever you go, you look at a planet, and it'll say like, here's who the planet likes, and here's who the planet doesn't like.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
So can that flip? Like if I have a lot of influence, like maybe a planet that was neutral or whatever, or like disliked me, can change neutral, and if they were neutral, maybe they'll put a like on me, and that way it's trouble for anybody that invades them. Like
Yeah.
if they attack a planet of mine, then that planet of theirs is going to not like it.
Yeah, actually a couple of things like that. Not exactly what you were saying. Although those are some definitely good ideas. But with the influence, there's one thing where you can purchase a technology that you can then kind of, it's more of a research that you can use on a planet that you've bartered with, and then you can actually conquer them after
Huh.
that.
Yeah,
That's one
clear
thing.
up the barter thing for me, because okay, I go to a planet and I've got a carrier and I got ground troops, right?
Yeah.
And it says, okay, do you want to barter with them or do you want to invade them? So if I invade them, I get their resources right now. If I barter with them, I get the whatever that they have. Which one of those was extreme, man. It was like, if you barter with us, we'll give you 40 carriers. And I was like, holy shit, because I was playing on like a small map, like what Brian's got here, and 40
Yeah.
carriers is a hell of a fleet. So it was just like, yeah, I'll do that. But I didn't understand, like, do I actually own that planet? Did I barter and like take them the nice way, and that way, they gave me some stuff, but I still get their resources, or what situation are they in?
So I'll give you kind of the lore explanation, and then I'll give you like just the straight algorithmic explanation.
Okay.
So the lore explanation is that you go there and you land some ground troops and you say, "Hey, we're gonna take you guys over. We're gonna completely deplete your planet of resources every single round or whatever that ends up being. Let's say every round is 100 years. We're gonna completely deplete those from now until you guys have nothing left. And they say, well, we do have all these carriers sitting around. Do you want to take those instead? And and they're like, okay, yeah, sounds good. In both instances, you get one victory point. So you get a victory point for bartering, you get a victory point for conquering. Now, if
But
you barter with them,
I never get the resources out of the planet though afterwards.
that's
Right?
correct. That's correct. So what you're giving up is those straight resources, which can be very flexible. And instead, you're getting a one-time now bonus, which sometimes can be very useful. So, for example, you mentioned that if you decide to conquer them, you get the resources now. You actually have to wait one round to start mining those resources. So you don't get them right at that moment. You do get them until the end of the game. But
Okay.
with bartering, once you barter with them, you can never conquer them again. But you do get the bonus right then, on that round, and you can use them for whatever you wish. And there's all kinds of different barterings. For instance, you can even refuel your entire fleet and get a bunch more fuel, and which allows you to kind of get like a strategic advantage by moving much further in that round than you would have been able to before. In which case, let's say you have a planet that's further away from you that has a ton of resources. You can barter with the one planet which maybe didn't have any resources but had influence and you didn't need it. And then you can capture that other one that has a ton of resources and get that every round. So there's all kinds of different things you can do. You can get technology by bartering. You can get a bunch of units by bartering. You can just get a bunch of resources right then and there. So let's say you're going to get 5 resources, for the rest of the game. Well, you can choose to just get 20, 25 resources right then and there, use them how you wish, but not have any more of those resources for the rest of the game.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I kind of see that in like in a civilization game, right? It would be like you took the city. Do you want to own the city or do you want to raise the city? Like you can like loot it and burn it down, or you can kind of take ownership of it and just kind of bring it into your empire, or you could actually make like a satellite state out of them, which is kind of what I was hoping was going on with the bartering was like, okay, you're going to give me this thing, so I'm not going to just have a conquest of your planet and kill all of you, but you're going to give me this thing. So at that point, it's almost like I want some kind of a trade agreement with them where they do give me like a trickle of resources, but it wouldn't be near what I'd have got if I'd outright took them.
Right.
Something like that.
Yeah, and that would actually fit in. We've actually revisited bartering. I think in every single patch that I've released, we've tweaked bartering in one way or another. So, I'm all open to the ideas. But one other area where the barters are especially effective, as you mentioned, is when you click on a planet, you can see who they're allies with and who they're enemies with. And this is just kind of generated at the very beginning of the game. The trick here is those relationships only affect bartering. So,
Okay.
so let's say I kill an enemy, I conquer, I should say, an enemy planet of another neutral planet. Now I'm going to be kind of in their good graces. I'm going to have like a +1 to my diplomatic relations with them. When I go to barter, you can sometimes get double what they were going to offer you before. So if you strategically conquer certain planets and barter with others, because if you barter with like an ally, for instance, the same thing happens. But if you conquer an ally, your barter is halved.
Well, how do you
So
know if they're allied with, like Planet A and Planet B are sitting next to each other? So how do I know that A and B are allied with each other?
yeah, so if
I have
you
to. Yeah, go
yeah, it's
ahead.
fine. If you click on the hexagon, you're going to see green arrows for allies. You're going to see red lines, I should say, for enemies. Also, if you look at the system info, so right click system info, it's also going to tell you their list of allies and enemies. Now the trick here is that you're not going to know who their allies and enemies are until they've been exposed on the map. That way you can't necessarily see where certain planets are through the fog of war. They
Uh-huh.
kind of know through history, I should say, if you want to look at the lore aspect. But those planets need to be explored by you or any of the other players before you can know where that planet actually lives. But yeah, so there's 2 different ways to do it. There's the lines, and then there's also just the system info.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's just I guess I just had not noticed the lines in there, or I hadn't encountered planets that had that relationship yet, or something.
Yeah,
But
just all planets do. So if you pick it up again, just left click on the hexagon where the planet lives, and you'll see green lines and red lines kind of dispersing from it.
Okay. It might be actually like a graphical artifact of the thing on my box. And that's the thing I wanted to bring up to you. So on my laptop, like the one machine that I've got, it looks just like what Brian's got on his screen there. The other one, it also has an NVIDIA card in it, but it's a 960 instead of a 970.
Hmm.
Um, and on that one, the hexes are dark black, but the background is also very dark. Do you like randomly pick a background? Because on his it's kind of purple and blue, right? But it's light. And then the one that it chose for me, it was like a really dark background.
And you
And
said it was
so
a
that
laptop, right?
yeah, and I had the gamma like I brought the gamma up till I could see it. But I had the brightness of the laptop all the way up, and it still wasn't helping out. So, but it was like a gamma thing. So
Yeah,
I'm
it's I actually that's I think that's a it's not randomly generated. It's just that on some computers, depending on the graphics memory, um, that background just doesn't render correctly. But I've definitely sent me your specs, and I can look into it. It's actually pretty rare.
okay.
I think I had my wife's laptop was the only one I was ever to reproduce that on, and it sporadically happened. It didn't happen all the time,
Yeah.
but I'm definitely interested in seeing what your specs were.
Okay. Because I
For
think
that.
I would almost like default to, like it's kind of a lavender there. I would almost make that like the background color, even without the graphic there. And that way, if it doesn't load or something, then you still end up with a light background color.
Yeah, yeah,
And that way
that's a good idea.
it kind of negates it. But yeah, I thought it was kind of weird, and I figured it might have been like a one-off thing, but I loaded it twice and it did it to me both times. So yeah, we'll troubleshoot that offline.
Yeah,
Um,
sure.
but yeah, so maybe that's why I wasn't seeing the arrow vector stuff or
Yeah, it's
whatever.
definitely possible.
So in this here, what I've seen the computer do is you build cruisers and you throw the cruisers out. You just spray them, right?
Hmm.
And when the ships, because a cruiser can move 2 hexes,
That's right.
and when you move 2 hexes, you don't reveal the hex that was in the middle though. At
Mm-mm.
least it didn't on mine. So they're almost it's like a jump, not a drive through, right?
Yeah, that's right. It's kind of like
And I
if you
can't
were to
move
visualize it,
twice. It's not like I can move one and then move him again. So I can move one or move two, but I only move one time.
right? I mean, you can if you choose the exploration strategy or if you barter for a refuel, but other than that, just vanilla, yeah, you can't move twice. The reason being, it was way too powerful to do that. You only had to spend half the fuel with cruisers, and you could reveal everything around you and just skip moving to the ones that were directly in front of you. And I was like, well,
Uh-huh.
what's the point of that? So I kind of view it almost like you're playing on a two-dimensional plane, but space is 3D, and you may
Right.
be going to a certain area of space, um, but you won't be revealing everything that's necessarily totally above and below you. That's kind of one
Well, I
game
mean,
lore explanation, but as far as the gameplay, it was just way too powerful to allow that. Even though we wanted the cruisers, we wanted an exploration type ship.
yeah. So the way the dynamic of that and the combat. And one other thing to put in, I didn't notice if there was a box to skip spectating AI combat, but it seemed like every time the AI fought the AI, I was kind of subjected to I have to sit here and kind of sit it out, which on a really big map with, like 20 battles a turn going down, that can take a while to get their turn over with. So it's kind of like I just want to see like a little explosion and some numbers fly up or something. And
Yeah,
because if there's a lot of it. Now, if I'm playing against other humans, yes, I want to enjoy their defeats. Uh, but
right.
you know,
That's kind of one of the reasons why it's like we can make a ton of nice features, but at some point, we have to ship the game too. But it's
mhm,
something that I've gotten enough comments on that we're definitely going to patch that in. The reason we decided not to right off the bat was because it was, um, I mean, our hope is that more people will play this game multiplayer. That's really where it shines, I think.
yeah, and I
Uh,
and I think immediately the looking at it, that was the strength, right? Was
yeah,
because, like I said, like we tried playing other 4X games in multiplayer, and it's bad because
yeah,
you're not moving stuff and doing things every turn. But here,
yeah.
it's more like a board game. I've never played with the Fantasy Flight one. I cannot think of the name of. It's
Twilight
Twilight
Imperium.
Empires. Yeah, Twilight Imperium. I've never played it, but I've seen it, and that just looking at it makes me want to play it. And I keep hoping, like, God, if they would just make a digital version of that, right? Because all my friends are scattered all over the place. Like, I'm in North Carolina, and Brian is in LA, and Hunter is also in North Carolina now, but he's still like 3 hours away, right? So that's board game night's really hard. So,
No, exactly. That
you
was
know,
that was exactly why I started making this game. I love board games. I mean, like I said, like one of the games I'm playing right now, it's a board game. And I was like, there's just I can either do Vassal, which I nothing against them. You know, it's like people put a lot of time into that, and a lot of people really enjoy it. But I really don't like playing anything on Vassal. I was like, I'm just gonna make a straight, 3D game, however long it takes to make, and it's gonna have all the rules built in, like a normal video game. Um, and that's kind of what we have here. So you'll see a lot of elements from Twilight Imperium because that was definitely an inspiration.
mm,
You'll have a lot of the resource management from games like Eclipse and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, like I said, definitely like a digital board game.
yeah. Well, the one thing in the way that you move your ships around and stuff. Well, but before I cover that, so what I started talking about, like the combat, like what we're watching here. So it has a mechanic that is, it reminds me of like Warhammer on the tabletop, right? Whenever units shoot at each other, you have to shoot the guy that's closest. You can't shoot past him and hit the
Hmm.
guy behind him that you really want to kill.
Yeah,
So I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, well, okay, so my fighters are kind of my scrubs, right? So
yeah,
every carrier is going to shoot 4 fighters out as a screen in front of it, and they're
yeah,
going to get to shoot, but they're there to die.
yeah,
And then so I've got my cruisers behind that, and then the carriers, and then the dreadnoughts. But wait a minute, the dreadnoughts have a lot of hit points. So would I maybe put the dreadnoughts in front of the carriers and let the dreadnoughts take the beating because it might take longer to kill them, and I have more things that are shooting while the dreadnoughts are dying, versus by the time if I had the dreadnoughts in the back, they'll burn up all my frontline guys, and then they get to the units that last a long time, and there's only a few of them. So, I'm looking at like it's kind of like a rock paper scissorsy sort of thing there, but I'm there's a calculation, and I just haven't arrived at it, like what the right mix is. So,
right. And it
um,
depends on what technology advances you have, and I'll say this: I'm talking a lot about what the game doesn't have. I think right now it does a lot of things good, but I think it's also good to talk about the things that I feel like need work on it. And one of the areas of that was more seamless formations during battles once you get into the late game. Um, Next patch, you guys will see, we'll have you can basically set up formation for an entire set of ships. So you have your fighters, your cruisers, your dreadnoughts, um, um, and your carriers, and you can basically prioritize which ones are first just in one click. So you move your dreadnoughts to the front, boom, all of your dreadnoughts are going to go into the front. Um, and then further, a lot of people were like, "Hey, I think this should be more of like a war game, and I want more input on what happens during battles." Now, if you play any board games, you're going to know that battles typically, unless it's specifically a tactical game, a lot of times it's just you roll the dice and whoever wins wins. It's like Risk, Even
yeah,
Twilight Imperium, it's pretty much risk based, and you'll find that this is, at least similar to that. And I kind of tried to recreate it, but when it comes to what people want in a video game, they're like, "Well, we have a computer that's able to do all these calculations. What can you give me?" We're gonna have
yeah,
two different. We're gonna have two different battle variants. One of which is going to be kind of more morale based, where it's not just you explode everybody and whoever dies first loses. You're gonna have ships that have different experience too. And going into the battle, every time you start losing ships, the morale of your fleet itself is going to go down. And when your morale gets all the way down to the bottom, you're gonna basically be, your guys are gonna retreat and you're gonna lose the battle. But you can actually go back to fight another day too.
yeah. Which
Um,
which is nice because you can get out of there before you have treaded down to nothing.
Right,
So
and so we're kind of going to build that mechanic a little more fluidly into the future system, but I'm also going to allow players to just use this vanilla as well in case they don't want to, um, you know, have that
yeah,
much input. They're like, well, I actually like the resource stuff, and I'd rather just do that um, instead of having all this morale stuff and war gamey type stuff.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because you could just say like, just calculate it. Like whenever I throw guys, because that's kind of the system. Did you play the old Warlords games? They're from like way back, right? But you would take a stack of guys, right? And
Uh-huh.
you would have like, your elves and dwarves and whatever, and each of them would have, how tough they were or whatever, and you could set what order you wanted them to fight in, but it
Yeah.
would be mano a mano, whatever the enemy brought in his stack. It's like, okay, his giant spider and your elf jump into
Hmm.
the ring. Who won? And
Yeah.
then the next guy from the losing side will jump in and fight the remaining hit points of that guy, right? So it was just like it's almost like in your game if you just lined everybody up straight, right,
Yeah,
and
like
you
single
had to kill
file.
them down the row, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was that kind of deal. So it's almost like the people that just want a resolution, right? You could let them set like priority, like, do you want the fighters up front, do you want the dreadnoughts up front, how are you going to do it? And then you could just like make two lines and just knock them down and just be
Yeah.
like, okay, these guys won.
Yeah,
Which
we could
I mean,
definitely just use an auto resolve too for people who just don't want to sit and watch that. Like if you have a really huge battle and you've been working up for it, like, yeah, I kind of want to watch how this plays out. But if
yeah,
not, then we can also have something like an auto resolve, especially with the AI, since we've gotten a lot of comments on that recently.
yeah. Well, I mean, what I'm talking about would almost be an auto resolve. It would just show the ships lined up and then check them off real quick, and then you would see like this many of these ships died and that many of his died, and this is the order that they were in, and that way
Yeah.
you kind of can intuit like, oh yeah, he put his cruisers up front and I
Yeah.
didn't, and that's why I lost. Um, but yeah, stuff like that. But anyway, so the other thing about moving the ships in this game, so you have the ships down at the bottom of the hex, and they're kind of like elbow to elbow with each other,
Hmm.
and a UI thing I'm sure you're fixing because you said about making the ships easier to select.
Yeah, the picking on
Where
them. Yeah.
Thank
yeah,
God.
so
Thank God.
yeah, it's a little tough, and
Sorry, guys.
but the thing, so like I pick a ship, like if I'm gonna move a carrier, I click a carrier, and then I choose where it's gonna go, and then it gives me three sliders. So it's
Hmm.
like how many ground troops are gonna be on the carrier, how many fighters, and then how many carriers are you moving.
Hmm.
So and I don't know how many ground troops. Is it four? It's like four fighters, four ground troops on a
That's right.
carrier.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's basically like you move the carrier slider and then the maximum of the other two is four times that. And but it's like every time I go to move a fleet, I have to individually select like, okay, here's the cruisers, I'm going to move these and go there, and then I'm going to move the carriers and whatever. So it's almost like if I could just say, okay, make a fleet, I'm going to stick this many cruisers, this many dreadnoughts, that many carriers in it, and it moves as a unit. And then it's more like a board game thing where I have a piece on the board and I can just grab it and drag it to a new hex. And like if it's my battle fleet, like I'm not gonna garrison places with it. Um, so
Yeah.
I
And that's funny that you mentioned that because I think it was just last week I was talking to David Heath, the owner of the publishing company, and he kind of mentioned something too. He's like, yeah, maybe you should just set up just like you said, set up a fleet. Maybe you can even give it a name, and then that fleet is just going to act as a whole. And our plan down the line, this isn't in a recent patch or in an upcoming patch, but it will be probably much later on. Is we're going to kind of add leaders to that as well. So fleets actually make sense. It's not just necessarily a an amalgamation of just a bunch of ships, but you're gonna have a leader that goes with it as well. But
that would
I
be
have
good.
gotten
That would be really good actually once you get the morale system in, because the leader could be a morale boost, right? Like if you got a leader there, they're not gonna break and run.
yeah,
But
exactly. So I'm
so
actually
so
really
let's
excited about that system.
because I did a similar thing in another game. So it was you have troops and they're lined up and they knock each other off, right?
Yeah,
And but you look at how many units did you bring and what's the health of the guys. So you add up, it's like, okay, we have 400 hit points on our side because you add up the health of everybody. So
yeah,
there's 400 hit points of units that came here. So once half of those get killed, then you start getting morale problems, right?
yeah,
So it would be like, okay, then you have a percentage based on, consider 50% to be 100%,
yeah.
then every percent under that is like, okay, we're going to make a morale check on units, and if more than half the units decide to bug out, then the whole army runs.
Right.
And
That's
so
pretty similar to what we want to do, and the leaders will definitely play into that too. The leaders will play into it. The races will play into it. So Legion of Reichs, if you read the descriptions, they're kind of more of like an honor base, like a war based race. They're probably going to have a higher starting morale. The Xudun, they might have a higher one too, because there's just a queen and a bunch of ant-men running around. But maybe the humans, they value human life better. So those are things I think can fit nicely into the system that we have, because our system is kind of just it's just like your kind of run-of-the-mill battle system with formations thrown in as well. But I think that we could definitely add a lot more spice with that morale and leader-based system too. So we're working really hard to get that out as soon as possible.
Well, you were saying that you have all these systems. You have a battle system, you have a diplomacy system, you have this expansion system.
Yeah.
But you were also saying earlier, something I remember is that you said you have an engine where you could just tweak things almost on the fly, I think you were saying?
Yeah, so it basically allows you to do an effect. So the strategic actions, the tactical actions, and the political agendas, even the technology, those add effects to the game, which then kind of just stay in place or they expire. So it's not necessarily like, hey, we can just add morale, which is a completely new stat, but it can add totally new. It's basically like update loop checks. So it'll check for anything that's within that list at runtime, which basically allows us to change the base rule set of the game. So obviously we can't add a new stat to a ship, but we can change anything within the existing rule set of the game. We can tweak that on the fly. So that's kind of how that plays into it. And then the changes that I'm talking about now with the battle system, for instance, that's kind of more of like it's like an add-on to the base functionality of the game, which of course we're going to release free, so you're not going to have to buy that or anything. We just want to make the game as good as possible. And if people really love it, then we'll release expansions where we get a bunch more artwork, get a bunch more races, that kind of thing. But as far as just the base core game, we just want to make that as good as possible. So that'll come out free.
Well, wow. I couldn't talk there for a second. What engine are you guys? Which engine are you guys running all this on?
So it's an open source engine called JMonkey Engine. It's kind of a silly name, but I came across it probably 5 years ago now, and I would say it was just coming out of its infancy. It was developed by one guy, and then a whole crew of people started taking over, and now it's incredibly active. And because it's open source, we can look at how all the stuff was done. If someone's using something like Unity, they're kind of stuck with however Unity decided to implement the rendering engine for the graphics or the sound engine for the sounds. And you can add in scripts and stuff, but you can't change the basics of the engine. We can. And since it's all just straight code, it's not just adding scripts on top of an engine, we can pretty much do whatever we want. So it's really flexible. And we decided to make the game really flexible off the bat, not necessarily because I thought, hey, we're going to have to change a bunch of things because people are going to complain about them or whatever, but we were like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if? And then it kind of just ran with it from there.
And folks, if you want to check this out, it's JMonkey Engine, one word. And
that's right.
I'm looking it up right now, and I'll have a link to it in the show notes because it does look kind of fascinating. Now, you were saying if the game gets popular enough, you'll have expansions. I want to talk about expansions, but in a minute. But I wanted to talk about something that fascinating that happened with this game. When this game first came out, and I hope this doesn't hurt, it was $30, if I recall correctly, and you got slammed in Steam reviews.
That's right.
Just slammed. It was like
it was bad.
It was really bad. But here's the thing, you guys. If you look at the Steam page now, it's almost it's in the 80s. It's positive. It's very positive. How did you do? I mean, I know you lowered the price. It's $20 now instead of $30, which is a bit easier for people to swallow. But what else did you do to cause such an amazing turnaround like that?
Honestly, I looked at the people who gave us bad reviews. I read through them with an open mind. I tested out the things that they were saying, and I was like, yeah, you're absolutely right. Killed. And then I had them killed. No, really. So I just looked at what they were saying about the game, what they didn't like, and I was like, here's the thing, I'm gonna change this. I'm gonna fix this. If you like what we've done, then feel free to give us a positive review. If you feel like it was a waste of money or whatever, then I just hope that this change, positively affects other people. And then people obviously on the forums who were, like I was saying, who were very vocal about knowing what the game could be, but not being shy. As gamers, most of them are not very shy on Steam forums about what they really don't like about it. And we just kind of read through those. We prioritized. We put out, I think, 4 patches, like boom, 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 made probably 4 dozen fixes or tweaks, and got the game into a really good shape to the point where now activity is a little bit lower on the patch end, but we're planning some really big things like I've been talking about. So yeah, I don't know, just listening to the community. It's pretty simple.
The best thing that you can do to promote sales of your game is, because this is the thing that I look at, and I know a lot of people do. I go there and I look at the game and I'm like, okay, it's within my price margin. The second thing that I look at is when was their last update and how many updates have they done since it released and what's the frequency. Not so much like what did they fix, but just how often do they touch this thing. And so it's like if it's like hot fix stuff and then there was like one major patch of stuff, then I'm cool with that, but if it's like if the game has sat for like 3 months and there's been not a peep out of the developer, I get kind of shy.
Yeah, definitely. So. And besides my wife having a baby 10 days ago, I think we've been pretty decent about at least addressing anything that people post on there. And like I said, it's been a little bit slow lately since another game came out, but hopefully we start gaining steam. And it's honestly,
but honestly, I think it's actually to your benefit that it's slow, because the people that were early adopter, interested, we're going to take a risk on your project here, and now they're happy, all right, and you're continuing to work on it and you keep those people happy. However, the nightmare scenario is that before you get the UI stuff all smoothed out and whatnot, and it's still kind of a little bit wonky in some places, it's like you have to play it to try to figure it out. You get a hold of somebody like Total Biscuit that grabs it, where he gives a game 15 minutes to make it or break it, and you're gonna get burnt forever, right? So,
totally.
So it's kind of like you don't want to get popular until you kind of smooth things, and then you're cool. So it's kind of like you're getting enough exposure to get the enough people are playing it to give you the feedback that you need to get it there, and then once it actually is where you want it, then you hope the big guys get it, but not before. So,
right, and that's
so I think you're in the right place here.
Yeah, I totally believe that too. Especially with some of the UI things that we have planned and some of the battle things that we have planned. Once we get those major things ironed out, then I won't feel anxious about anybody playing it. Really, it's like my hope is that people either love the game or hate the game for what it is. Yeah. And if they hate it for what it is, then there's nothing I can do about that, and that's fine. But if they hate it for the UI, then I feel like I've kind of failed in that area. So.
My advice on the UI thing, and it's like I want to talk to you after this at some length about what your plan is and that, because whenever I look at this, I see a lot of potential for things that you could do. So I'm really curious what you're going to do.
It's not just UI potential. There's potential for more diplomacy, more. There's there's tons of potential here.
Well, I'm just saying the information that is in the game, and then being able to present that in a way that the player can kind of drink that in without having to work to look at it, right? And if you click something, like if you right click on a planet and then you see what their stats are, and then you go away from it, it's like, oh, now I don't remember what those were. But if there was a way to reveal the stats across all the planets, like bring an overlay up and it just says, okay, everybody's production and influence is whatever, or put a heat map across the the thing or whatever it is, because if I'm going to invade the enemy and I want to know what planet's my target, it's like, what do I need right now from him? Do I want to take his influence planets away? Well, where are his hot ones? Like, I'm going for that. That kind of deal. But like a lot of the things that you play here, your tactic stuff or strategies, it reminds me of like if you were playing like Magic the Gathering or something, right? So you can throw an instant out on the table and just say, okay, the rules change for right now. Or you could put an effect that stays for a while but expires, like counts down or whatever. And I'm thinking, well, okay, so this game is like 80% of a board game as it is. So I think the formula that I would go with is look at the UI as like, okay, if this was a board game and I didn't have the luxury of like hovering numbers in the air, how would I present this? You
Right.
know, it would have to be like on a card or something. So whenever somebody puts an ability in play like that, especially if you got four human players that are doing it, you want to see what the other people just played, right? Unless you're trying to hide that. So it would be a thing of almost like, okay, they have these cards in their hand now because they've unlocked them, and you can play that card, but that card lays on the table. And then when you're rotating the map around, it would almost be like tabletop simulator, right? Where it's like there's physically a card laying on the board, and you can, zoom over there and read it,
Right.
and stuff like that. So I mean, it's art assets to do that, but there's easy ways to get around that, but still. But I guess it's kind of like the Occam's razor. Like, what is the easiest way to show this information? And it's usually the best. And that comes down to like, how would I do it if it was physical?
Yeah, and with a lot of
So
things, to be honest, it's like, how about we just start with any way to see this information? Like one of the things that we're going to be putting in is just what's the current political agenda in effect. It was something I was like, yeah, I know because I've been playing this, and I'm kind of like, oh yeah, like I just voted on that. I remember what it was, but then people are like, oh, what did I just vote on? So
yeah,
our
and
definitely
that
our start is just to go through everything that people do, show that to people for as long as it's in effect somewhere, and then
mm,
start from there. But
yeah, and also like you have that log window down there, right? I would
yeah,
abuse it. In fact, I would make it a tabbed log window. So I would have like your purchases and stuff, like what did you spend points on, influence or production or what. That would be a tab. And then combat results, especially even for the AI fighting AI or whatever, then
yeah,
you could say, like in the combat thing would be like AI 1 showed up with this many ships and AI B showed up with this many ships and they fought in this system and this AI won, right? And you would have like, one line per combat that went on or something. And that
right.
way I kind of get a sense of like what went on, especially if I have like quick auto resolve stuff on, because it's just going to blink by really quick. And then I can see like, oh yeah, these systems just changed hands or something. Um, and then if it was a thing that changed like in the last turn, I would almost kind of color the hex different or blink it or something like that. Um, and
Yeah, we kind of have that. Like, for instance, the player that just went during their turn, you can see everything that they've done. Like, for instance, right now on the stream, you can see that that planet was recently moved into, so it's kind of blinking. But I guess you mean for like an entire round, right? That players would want to see
yeah,
that.
or if not that, then what about I just turn an overlay on, right? Like I want to see it momentarily, but I want to see it map wide. So
Yeah,
I
kind of
just
just
I
like tab
pop
in,
on an
tab out of it.
overlay. Yeah,
Yeah,
and then you could have multiple overlays the person could select. Like, okay, show me. It's almost like if you're playing Crusader Kings or something, right? It's like show me the political view. Now show me my influence view and whatever. And it's like the countries change color into different, you know, um, there's a different legend for each map type,
yeah, those are
and
all cool
it's
ideas.
basically you're just flipping like, okay, color all the hexes based on who owns them, and now color them based on how much production is there and stuff like that, or but yeah, that would just be like a momentary thing down there, or you could click it and say, okay, I want the map in this state until I change it, or
Yeah,
whatever. And then
those are
as
cool
far as
ideas.
like the selecting ships and stuff go, it's like I'm gonna select the hex, and then you could have the ship selection thing. It would almost be like at the bottom of the screen. It could show like larger versions of the ships, and then I could actually just physically drag the ship off the bar at the bottom up into whatever hex it needs to go to or something like that. So
Yeah,
you
I
make
think
it a
that's
little more.
almost
I
yeah,
would
that's
just make
almost
it like a
exactly what
little
my
more.
developer even because we've been looking at just how to totally redo that whole ship picking thing. Like we want to get rid of it completely, and
Yeah,
that's really similar to what my developer was proposing too for that. So
because
that's
I
definitely good to
guess
have some validation on that idea.
Yeah, I guess I'm playing to the strength of it resembling a board game. So
Yeah,
it's kind of like go all the way. Just make, like drag the ships like they're plastic things out there and stuff like that, and just make it tangible. And then
yeah,
it's even better, right? Because you wanna give the players that feel like they're sitting around a table together.
yeah. Cool.
But yeah, I think that's actually that. Just to kind of say the same thing over again. But yeah, the strength of the game I think is the resemblance to a board game. Because when people look at that and they say, okay, this kind of looks like a board game, that tells you a lot right off the bat. Like each turn is going to be significant, and
Right,
there's no build queues in this thing, and stuff like that. And it's
right, right,
very multiplayer friendly. I could tell that just looking at the screenshots. Like this is going to be good in multiplayer, and it's not going to waste my time a lot.
right, right.
Yeah, it does. I like how it doesn't waste time. Now, I've only played the smallest maps, and those games, which it's fascinating. It only takes like 20 minutes. Like you lost or you won. It's like, oh, that's kind of awesome.
Yeah, it's definitely got some flexibility with how long the games can take.
But how I forget how big can the maps go?
So on the streamer now you can see there's 3 rings around the middle. You can go up to 10 rings, and then you can also there's you can set the resources for the planets, which it actually scales all the technology prices with it off the bat. It scales all of the barters off the bat, stuff like that. So you can set the resources to be like 10 times what the resources are normally. That's in case you really want to like build a ton of fleets or something like that. Um, and then you can also set the planet density, that kind of thing, which again, it'll either speed up or decrease the it'll increase or decrease the length of the games. Um, you can really play a game for hours depending on uh, how you set it up. If you turn off victory conditions, that's going to make the game go longer. We really wanted to give all the options that we developed for like debugging or just, hey, wouldn't it be cool if? And we're like, let's just give all these players these options and let them kind of tune it how they want it.
So like the only thing that you can build to enhance a planet is actually to build a space station slash thank you to build like a space station slash factory there, right? So you can produce ships because there's really nothing else that you're producing other than research, right?
Right. And we do have plans on that moving forward. Right now, it's kind of just, it serves 2 purposes. It's a marker, and it also serves to show that how many how many ships that you can create there that round
Mm.
in particular. So
Yeah.
it
So
shows you and it shows other players. So it really kind of serves a simple but really important purpose.
okay, because the thing about the game that I don't think what we've covered anymore is you do have some interesting limits on the player, but where you force them to have decisions. Like in the early colonization phase, right? The one that I run into is basically, yeah, I can build a lot of ships, but I don't have enough fuel to run them everywhere.
Yeah,
So I can either scout, which is cheap, or I can actually run my troops out to conquer planets, which the planets don't seem to resist, right? It's just like one ground troop's enough to do it.
that's right. Yeah,
And yeah, so it's just like I need a carrier with one ground troop on it. But a carrier
right.
costs 3 fuel, and I burn my fuel out really fast, and the carriers can only move one. And meanwhile, I scout it out at a distance of 2 hexes, so it's like I know the next turn I'm going to be moving those carriers twice, and then I look at how much fuel I've got, and it's like, yeah, I don't have that much fuel income. So then that becomes some hard decisions about which planets do I really want to take first, and it's usually the ones that have fuel because it enables me to expand faster. Um,
Right.
so
And to kind of further on those the decision making process. So then you also have those strategic actions like I talked about. And I will go in a little bit more depth on that. But for instance, in the beginning of the game, if you want to explore more versus just maybe jetting over to the Terran on a live stream and just taking out the blue guys, um, you can move a carrier, for instance, twice in that single round if you use that strategic action. And then
yeah, but
if you
that's
use that,
only if you're moving into an unexplored hex, though, right?
yeah, an unexplored one or a neutral one. So it can be under fog of war, or it can just not be currently taken over by another player.
Oh,
Um,
okay. All right. I didn't understand that. So I thought, hey, I've scouted it. That means I don't get to use my explore bonus.
yeah,
Otherwise,
you can use
I'd have
it.
scouted with the carriers because, it's like, hey, you found something? Great. Drop a troop there. rather than like find it and then go back to
I ha-
hustle a carrier out there.
I have to say, I really like those strategic actions that you get to choose at every turn. It makes you like, this turn, I want to focus on war. And this turn, I just want to explore, man.
Well, and the thing
I
is,
really like that.
well, and the thing is, the more you use that action, the better it gets. Like
Yeah.
it levels up.
Yeah, so that kind of like,
if you're a
that kind of
yeah, it's
dictates
like
what you do for a game, for like at least a few turns if you want to stick with that particular like way of being, or that what's the word? Dictate, I guess. If you want to focus on exploration for like 4 turns, you'll be awesome in 4 turns.
do you message to the other players like, okay, this guy's going down the war path, or this guy's going the exploration path, or are they just kind of like in the dark about what I'm doing?
No, they're in the dark. So, and that was kind of on purpose. Again, that could probably be a configuration as well. But I mean, you don't want other players to know what your strategy is. It's your strategic action, something that you're going to try and take people by surprise with. Like, oh, he might use warfare this time, so I might be wary of actually moving within range of him. Or maybe he is going to just get a technology upgrade. Who knows? So right now, that's actually hidden from the other players what your strategic action is.
Oh, okay. Well, that's actually maybe your spy system right there. Is just like all you do is just reveal that, like, or if fog of war, right? Like I run into your worlds and I see them, but I don't see your whole empire when I run into you. Like a lot of RTS games, or not RTS, a lot of 4X games are like, oh, you bumped into the Antarans. Here's everything the Antarans own, and it's like, no, I should only really see that border world where I met them. And they're not going to tell me about the rest of it. Like they might trade me their map or something, but it would be an intel problem, right? Like if aliens showed up and I don't trust them, I'm not going to tell them where all my planets are on day one, right?
Right. Yeah, I know we kind of have a different approach to that, more just along the lines of like the board game approach, where yeah, you kind of want to see what everyone's stuff is, but since it's a video game, we also have the opportunity to do things like that to actually hide things from all the other players. It's something that we've talked about, but we just haven't really pulled the trigger on it, just with other kind of heavy hitting enhancements that we've been working on lately. But I mean, I've been
Yeah.
working on this game now for like 3.5 years, so.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what I'm saying is like the fog.
I can keep working on it forever. Like as long as people are enjoying it, people are playing it. I'm always open to more ways that we can make it. Just give players different options like that, like different fog of war options.
Yeah. Well, it would, yeah, because I'm seeing like an option where it's like I don't see where your planets are, although I could send spies over there to find out.
Right.
And they might be that's cheaper than bumping into your planets and having to fight with my ships all the time, because maybe I don't want to antagonize like that. But I could get like a spy ship and send it over, and it might get caught, but that way it's just like, hey, I found a spy ship like way in the back of my empire. Oh shit, now he knows where all my stuff's at. And where your fleets are is a big thing. Like, if you have a fight going on with another AI and you're not seeing the whole map, that could be pretty important, right?
Yeah.
So, but it's just like play it. I tend to treat it like board game style. So I'm just like fog of war off, show me everything, and it's just like I'm sitting around the table with everybody else, and it's what would I be seeing? Well, everything they got.
Right.
So, and it also helps to learn the game because I want to see what the AI is doing and
exactly.
not just bumble into them. But yeah, I can kind of see it going both ways.
Right.
So you say you've been working on this for 4.5 years. What was the impetus to get you started working on this?
We kind of touched on it earlier, but I love playing board games, and I love playing board games with friends. Like I used to sit like every Saturday, we'd get together and we'd play something. And once I used to live in Wisconsin. Once I moved from Wisconsin, I had another one of my gaming buddies moved to Denver. Another one moved to stayed in Wisconsin. I guess it's hard. It's a hard place to leave. Too much alcohol. But I wanted to be able to play these games with people that I knew, and I wanted to play these types of games. And there just weren't any games that were built for that specific purpose. Where things like Vassal, we can play online with people, but that takes forever, and it's kind of clunky, and you have to know the rules and this and that. And I was like, you know what? I'm a programmer. I've made some games, and I want to make a kind of digital board game. And that's really how all of this started. It started like true board game, and then it became this big 3D, you know, um, kind of 4X space game. But it's never really left that board game style, and also that multiplayer focus where you can play something pretty quickly with people. Because that was one
Yeah.
thing I found pretty early on was I could sit for 6 hours and play a board game because everybody's in the room with me. But you can't do that with a multiplayer game because no one's just going to sit there, in a room alone doing who knows in their underwear or whatever for 6 hours and play that same game on a consistent basis. Obviously, people do sometimes, but that's just really not how multiplayer games work best. A lot of it's just these kind of quick sessions where you hop on with some people and maybe you can play 4 games instead of one, or maybe you can set up a huge galaxy, and play for a couple hours if you want. But I wanted to give players the options to play something really quick. So really, it was that multiplayer board game feel. That's really what I wanted to produce here.
Yeah, so you have everybody takes a turn in moving, right? Is that key to the mechanic, or could all the players plot their move at the same time, and then when everybody hits ready, then it happens, and if fleets run into each other, then they fight it out?
It is actually another strategy because the players who gain the most victory points that round, they're gonna go last the next round.
Oh,
So,
okay.
it is an added strategy there.
Hmm.
Um,
The reason
there's
that I was thinking that is because you were talking about the problem of having people play a virtual board game, and
mhm.
the big problem I see is like the AFK guy, right? And it's like, hey, it's Bob's turn. Where's Bob? I don't know. It's like his last turn was like 5 minutes ago. Maybe he's wandered off or whatever, and it's like, yeah. But if it was simultaneous turns, then everybody would be constantly doing something. So
Yeah,
I see why you're doing it the way you're doing it too.
yeah, that's a really tough system to get right, and um, yeah, it was one that I thought about. We actually have some more plans in mind for asynchronous play, but obviously, like I said, one thing at a time. We're just going to keep chugging along, making the core game as good as possible, and then we'll start,
Hmm.
doing all those extra add-ons and stuff.
I'm kind of surprised actually that you didn't develop this as like a web application like HTML5 or something first. Because just looking at the thing of the multiplayer focus and that is just like, I don't know, if I'd imagined somebody was going to solve that problem, I would have thought like, oh, they just grabbed Flash or something and like knocked it together on the web like on Congregate.
I
So
just
I'm
hate
glad you
web
didn't.
development, and I hate Flash.
Yeah.
Now I gotta say, I'm glad you have a single player, very strong, if I may also add single player element to your game, because I'm
Thank you.
honestly tired of seeing games like this that are just online multiplayer only. It just seems like to me like an excuse not to have to make an AI. And it's like, come on. I mean, multiplayer games don't last forever. But single
Yeah,
player games, people play those 10, 20 years down the line.
right.
Oh yeah,
Seriously.
but like this, you've got the map thing going on here. Like you could do almost like a Catan knockoff in space kind of thing. You could do. There's so much stuff you could do with this engine the way you got it.
Yeah, we have a really great engine, and we're already kind of putting ideas together for after we feel like Falling Stars is in a good place, and once we can kind of go into maintenance and support mode on it, or whatever that ends up looking like. I mean, maybe this game is going to explode, and we're going to have to even get more people just working on this. If that's the case, great. I'm going to work on a game that people like. But
Mhm.
at the end of the day, yeah, we have this really awesome engine, and you swap out graphics, you swap out mechanics. Like I said, we can switch out rule sets on the fly. Um, you can do that with any type of game. So,
Yeah. Yeah. No, as far as like the spaceship graphics and stuff, if I wanted to mod that, I mean, let's say I'm the community, right? And I decide like, okay, I want everybody's spaceships just to be like plastic spaceships that look their color. Can I just swap them out, or is there some kind of headache to that in the engine?
um, it's not in the engine. It's more just in what we have currently supported for modding. Now, typically, in order to make it worth having all of those modding tools, you have to have a modding community who wants to do that. And since this is our very first game, we just didn't have a very big community to start. We've had some people ask the question, but in order for us to prioritize that over something like UI or making battles a little bit better, we were like, yeah, let's just save that until people really want it. Now there are ways, but there's nothing in the engine that's going to suppress that type of functionality.
Well, because I was thinking just like, is there a directory and it's got ship models in it, and I just write over those and then it uses mine. Because that way you're not really building tools for it or anything. I can just actually swap assets or something.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of like a zip directory. So it's a
Okay.
little bit tricky. Yeah, it's a little bit tricky, but not that tricky. I mean, I'm sure I could do it pretty quickly. I'm thinking through it as we're talking about it because I hadn't necessarily considered just, hopping in and opening up the assets directory, but everything kind of gets compiled into one place. And so you just have to open up that. I could actually look into it and maybe open that up as a resource for people who are interested in at least doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, people love that sort of thing.
You've made it though whenever you like look at the Android store and you see some Chinese game that looks exactly like yours and it's using your assets. So it's like you're big time then because they stole your shit.
Yeah. Oh, I feel so happy that China stole my stuff.
Well, it sounds like you have a solid plan for not only the immediate future, but the far-off future should the game do well, and we, of course, hope it does. What is the next big thing you plan to implement?
So that's twofold. The battle system that I talked about with the leaders and with the morale, I think that's going to add some nice flavor. The political crafting, where you can craft the political agendas and use those to kind of thwart other players' plans or your own. And then the big one, the UI overhaul. We're gonna just start from the ground up kind of thing, not change it all fundamentally, but just say, hey, if we had to do this over again, how would we do it? What would we show? How would we show it? Just give that a really hard look. Our UI platform has gotten a lot better. We have a lot more functionality for it now than when we started, which is kind of one of the reasons why we have this mismatch in some UIs are good and some parts of it are really bad. But we plan on homogenizing that more or less and just adding a lot more functionality. And obviously, I've actually written down a lot of the ideas that you guys have talked about. I'm going to visit those and see what we can do. But yeah, the UI is probably the biggest one. I think people are going to enjoy the game a lot more once that's resolved.
It sounds like you have a lot of great plans. I'm kind of out of questions. What about you, Jim?
No, I think I'm pretty good.
Okay, yeah, I don't know why I'm just losing my mind. I'm really tired.
I do, like, not necessarily tonight, but like sometime in the near future. Like, I want to look over your secret documents about this new UI.
We should also try and get some multiplayer of this going. I'm sure it's probably a good deal of fun.
Yeah, actually, I'd already been Phil about that when we were talking about it. That was part of the conversation that we had.
Right.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. We'll have to make that happen.
Yeah, we'll make that happen.
Yeah, because I think honestly, the best thing, and I'm trying to encourage this, is like when we get a developer on and they've got a game that's multiplayerable, and it's a thing that's a game that could be demonstrated, right? Is like let us come in as the clueless and then kind of get the tutorial, like guide us through a couple turns of the game, and then that kind of creates a YouTube tutorial video, right? And
that sounds fun.
Kind of. Yeah, because if I watch somebody explain how to play a game, but if they're just explaining it to an empty room, it's not the same. But if they're explaining it to a person, and then the person can kind of ask for clarification and stuff, I have a much easier time watching a video that's kind of interactive like that, and I retain that a little better because the screwy way my brain works. But I just figure that might also boost sales as well, because then people say, oh yeah, I get it, right? And if these idiots can understand it, I'll do fine.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. So
no, we'll have to try and arrange that at some point. But yeah, Philip, I want to thank you for taking the time to come on and talk about your game. Guys, the game is Falling Stars: War of Empires, and it had a kind of a rough start, like we talked about, but if Jim and my interest in how the game works is any indication, this is good stuff. like very good stuff.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's never a shortage of space games, and you have made I'd say a good like mix between a 4X but something more streamlined, which people can play in a short amount of time if they want to, or they can, like you said, expand to a larger game if they want to.
You know something nobody has done yet, right?
What's up?
There will be games that like Battlefleet Gothic, right? I go in and it's like, hey, I want to play Battlefleet Gothic, and I hit play, and then it randomly matches me with somebody, right? And we're in a game, and I didn't have any say about it or whatever. But I also can't see like how many people are in here waiting on a game or whatever. So it's kind of like if that game had a lobby, like the old 40K games did, right? So you go in and it's like, hey, there's 200 people in the lobby, and it's like, all right, I'm gonna set up a game, and whoever randomly comes in here, right? But at least you can kind of interact with the rest of the community or whatever. But then again, like if you go to a thing and then the community hasn't developed yet, then you don't want the impression like, oh, a user ends up in an empty lobby and it's like, hello. It's like there's an echo in here. So you don't want to do that either because that doesn't feel good. So what I'm thinking nobody has done is what about actually putting a thing like, I want to play this game, right? Like I'm looking for a player. It almost like an in-game forum post, like, hey, if you wanna play this sometime, I'm in this time zone, message me, whatever. And because it's like how many players can you do total? It's like I see 4 here, right? That's the limit.
That's the limit currently.
Okay.
Right.
So it's just like, hey, I'm looking for 3 other people, right? And I'm available in these time zone whatever. I mean, this is way down the road, like once you address everything else. But it's kind of like I think that might help the game's longevity. Would be like, hey man, every second Thursday we're playing here. So if you want to show up for that.
Didn't Frozen Synapse do something like that? It was a little simpler,
They
but
may have, yeah.
Like they did a thing where you could log in and set yourself to open and looking for a game, I think.
Yeah, but you have to sit there. That's the problem.
No, I don't think you have to sit there. Don't you? Can't you just leave for a game and then go off, and then a game will eventually start? I think that's how that works on Frozen Synapse.
I mean more like meeting people, right? Like I want to find somebody to play this game with.
Yeah, like joining like a group, and you can have like a description for the group where you say, hey, we play every Friday at whatever, and we're looking for more people. We have 2 out of the 4 slots, and we're just gonna keep playing until we have 4 people or whatever. Because obviously you can play with AI players online too. But yeah, that's actually a pretty cool idea.
Well, I mean the analog solution is create a Steam group for the game, and then you just join the Steam group, and then you see everybody else that owns the game, right? But it's kind of like then you want to flag yourself like, I'm looking to play this. But the other way would just be like, hey, sometime in the future, right? Like if anybody's interested, tick this box, and then we'll get together. We'll figure out when or whatever. So it's almost like a looking for group in the future kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
But anyway,
okay.
it was just like a weird idea that came to me because
It's not a bad idea.
it's like, well, yeah, it's like
Yeah,
I
it's
got
not.
that Witcher board game, and I like that thing. That's like board game done right on a computer, right? And it's light enough, and it kind of explains itself. Like the game itself is its own tutorial. So it's kind of like I could just grab anybody and play that, and it's almost like playing like Talisman, right? It's just like draw a card, do this thing, and it's lightweight enough like that. But finding people to play the damn thing is a pain in the ass because I got to go down like the list of Steam, and it's like, would all of my friends own this thing? And then I pester them like, hey, you want to play this? You want to play this? And I'm going down the list. So it's kind of like I wish that I could just hang a flag out like, hey, here's 5 things I'm looking to play right now. And maybe that's just a Steam feature that they need to put in the friend thing. But it's just like, what am I playing this week? If you want to play any of these, let's go.
This kind of game would work well with that kind of system too. It would work well with like that kind of asynchronous, play.
Well,
definitely.
and it's a thing of like play with your friends, or there should be a way to find a pickup group and get it done, because I think this thing is going to be at its best with 4 people.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised because Steam is gearing itself more and more to be a social network. I would not be surprised if they eventually implemented something like that. I mean, it would just make sense for them. They would get more people on Steam. They would get more people on their platform. So why not implement some kind of social matchmaking lobby system like that? I mean, they already have Steamworks. Just build on top of that.
Yeah, but see, that's one step away from dating. And then you have the Steam dating platform.
No. Well, you know what? They might do that. Like, say you're single. And
I like
hook it up
long walks on the beach and Doom.
Well, I need to wrap this up because I'm losing my mind. But Philip, again, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us for over an hour and a half about your game, guys.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Oh, it was. The game is, oh my God, I'm losing my mind. Falling Stars, War of Empires. It's on Steam. It's $20. It's a really great board game that you could play in a lot of different ways without victory conditions. You can watch the AI do its thing, and the AI is pretty good, and there are lots of updates coming, so this is definitely one to keep an eye out for. Next week on the show, as I was saying earlier, we're going to have the folks behind 3030 Death War Redo on to talk about their adventure game / escape velocity clone thing of awesomeness. So we're very excited about that. And this Thursday, so far, it's a very close race in the polls. Star Trek Online is ahead by 1 vote, you guys. So if you want me to either play Star Trek Online or 1990s Hard Nova by Electronic Arts, head over to spacegamejunkie.com and vote in the poll. Philip, where can people find you online?
We have a Facebook page, Falling Star War of Empires. You can also find us at lnlpublishing.com. That's our publisher's website. And then you can find more information on the game also at our website, arkisphere.com, arkisvir.com.
All right. Thank you so much. And folks, we will see you next week. Have a great night, everyone. Bye-bye.